Hello everyone, welcome back to JTest class. Has been a long time now. We're gonna continue with these Windows 2012 R2 server videos, and today we're gonna learn how to configure Active Directory, how to install and configure Active Directory. For that, I have created 3 VMs here. These 3 have LAN server 1, LAN 12 server 1, LAN 12 server 2, and LAN 12 client 1. So I have 2 machines with Windows Server 2012 R2 and 1 machine with Windows 8.1. Right now they are not joined to the domain, there is nothing on them. If you don't know how to install Windows Server 2012 R2, you can check the video that I previously made. Okay, so I can show you my VMs here. So you can see it's just a VM, has nothing on it, just a single user. And then I have my S1, and this server it's gonna be a part of the domain. We're gonna use it as a router to communicate our LAN12.net network that we're gonna create, or domain that we're gonna create, to the outside world. And then I have my LAN 12 server 2, which is gonna be the domain controller where we're going to install Active Directory today. Okay, so to install Active Directory, we just need to add roles and features. And then we go to installation type, it's going to be role base. Then you select the server, in this case will be LAN 12 S2. And then on the server role, we just need to install Active Directory domains and services. So it's going to add a lot of features that it will require for that service. So you're just going to say add features. And sometimes you have to, Active Directory requires DNS, so you will have to install the DNS server. So sometimes you just have to install this one and it will install DNS for you. I'm gonna select it just in case, and we're gonna do the same, add features, and then we're just gonna click next, next, next. If you want, you can read over these. I'm not gonna read over that, but you should. And then we're gonna say restart destination server automatically if applied, if required. When you install Active Directory, will require to restart the server, so we can just click that. And then we're gonna say install. Now you can also support the configuration settings, and if you look at it, it will be a PowerShell. So you're just gonna click install. I'm gonna pause in the meantime. So let's talk about a little bit of what Active Directory is. Active Directory is a domain-based tool that allows you to control your users, computers, and groups in one place. This is very used on enterprise networks. It's part of Windows, a specific thing of Windows, and it's really hard to get it to work on Linux. So after this is complete, you can see it didn't take that long. We will have to promote the server to a domain controller, so we can either click here, that will do the trick, or we can close here and come to this flag and say promote this server to a domain controller. Now we have 3 options here. We can add the domain controller to an existing domain. So if you have a domain and you want to add another domain controller to this domain, you can go with this. You can add a new domain to an existing forest. Now a forest is a group of domains, so you have to say is it a tree domain, and we can talk about all those on a later video. In this case, we're just gonna add a new forest, and we're gonna call it LAN12.net. Just in my case, you can call it whatever you want. So we're gonna continue, and now it's gonna do its process here, and it's gonna take some time there. And we could I could talk about the main forests and trees later on the video. Just we'll make this video so long. Okay, so after it is done on the first step there, it's gonna ask you what kind of forest functional level you want to select, or this domain is gonna have. It is still loading here, that's why it won't allow me to click. What this means is for what kind of version of Windows will this Active Directory be able to talk to. If we select Windows Server 2012 R2, it's only gonna be able to communicate with Windows Server 2012 R2 domains, or other servers with Active Directory that has been created on the same level. So if you select 2008, it's gonna be able to communicate with all the system. In this case, it's gonna leave it 2012. If you go here, you can see you can go down there. We're gonna leave it on 2012, and then you can see here it's gonna install domain controller, sorry, DNS, and the global catalog. This means this is required by Active Directory. Is a kind of a database. So then you're gonna assign the password that you want for your administrator of the directory service restore mode. I'm gonna use the same password as my administrator. You can use any password you want. This one you can just keep next. Now it's gonna select the NetBIOS domain name. What is this? This is the name that you can resolve the server. Instead of typing in the full qualified domain name, you can just type in LAN 12 and it will find it. This is for really old systems. It's still compatible on the new Windows, but this was used on the early days, and DNS was not a big part of the game. So as additional settings, there's a Active Directory domain services database, log files, as sysvol. We're not gonna touch that unless you know what you're doing. We recommend not touching that. So you're just gonna click next, and this is all that's gonna get installed. You can view the script here, and it's PowerShell. You can see how to do it through PowerShell if you're interested in that. And then we're gonna click next. It's gonna check some prerequisites. So it's gonna check DNS is installed. It's gonna check that it has privilege to install the domain controller, things like that. So I'm just gonna let it run here. Okay, so all prerequisites checks has been passed successfully, and you can see here I checked that the domain controller has security settings that allows cryptography, that the delegation to DNS, but those are not all important, so you can kind of skip them. So as long as you have this here, you can just click install. Then it's going to start installing. That can take some time. In this case it's a VM, so it probably take like a minute or so. Okay, so when it's done installing, this is gonna pop up. You're about to sign out. This computer is being restored because of Active Directory. It's gonna restart itself, so it's restarting right now. Sorry about that. So it will be coming back, and now when it comes back, it's gonna have the LAN 12 thing on it. Okay, so it's coming back on. It normally takes a little bit longer than when it is not connected to a domain, and especially the first time it loads up. Okay, so we're on the login screen now, and as you can see, now we have the LAN 12/administrator, where LAN 12 will be the domain. So we're gonna sign in, and it's applying the profile settings, and it's gonna say no to that. And by default, it loads the server managed, but now Active Directory is installed. And we can make sure of that if we go to Tools. You can see here Active Directory Administrative Center, Domain and Trust, the PowerShell model for Active Directory, sites and services, and users and computers. There is a lot of stuff that we can do with Active Directory. It will take a couple more videos for that though. The main thing we're gonna see today is we're gonna see how to create users and groups in Active Directory. I'm gonna show you a little bit on the interface. So we have two ways to do that. We can either go to the Administrative Center that has a better graphic interface, or we could go to the Active Directory users and computers. That's normally what I do. Is more user friendly, easier to manage. So you can see here, this is the default folder for users and some predefined groups. And on this OU or this folder, you can see the computers, and computers are gonna appear here when you add them to the domain or you connect them to the domain. On this domain controllers one, you can see S2, because S2 has Active Directory, will show up here. So any other computer that you have with Active Directory on this domain, it's gonna show up here as well. So we're gonna create a new folder, and these folders, by the way, I call OU, organizational unit. So we're gonna create a new one. I'm gonna call it users accounts, and you can send protect container from accidental deletion. What this is does is it prevents that someone comes and right click and delete or moves your OU and then you can find it anymore. We're gonna leave it like that for now, and you're gonna see it's gonna pop up here. Now we're gonna create a new user. You can either click here, you can right click new user, and then you can just type in the name. In this case you're gonna create a username test1, and we're gonna call it test1. You'll see the user will be test1 at lan12.net. We're gonna click next, and then you can select the password. I'm gonna sign out a password, and I'm gonna say password never expires, because in this case I don't want to be changing that password for the user every time. So I'm just gonna click next and finish, and you can see the user is right there. Now if we want a group, we can either create a new OU, or we can say for groups we can create a group right here. You can either click there, we can come right click new group, and we have three types of group. We have domain, local, globals, and universals. We don't use these ones as much. We use globals and domain locals. Domain locals are, we use them almost, well, always when we want to assign NTFS permissions to folders. So we'll have to create a user, create a global group, put those users on the global group, and then create a domain local group where we're gonna put the global group. So it's a far more complicated process. It has a different explanation, so we're not gonna see it today. So you're just gonna create a global group. I'm gonna call it global users, and that's it. You created a group. Now you can add users to this group by double clicking the group and members. You can say add, and we can type here test1. You can see now test1 is part of the global group users. Or you can just go to test1 and you can say member of, and by default all the users are part of the domain users group. You can add here global users, and now it is this user is part of the global users group as well. So that's the one interface. On the other interface, it's pretty much the same, just has a different structure here. You can go to the lan12 local. You can see the same folders. You can see here the new OU that we created with our group and our user, and it's the same. You can say new here, group, user, or computer. You can right click, you can change the domain controller. You can say new, group, user, or computer, or organizational unit. It's basically the same. You can double click here. It's a different, slightly different interface, but it has the same options as the other one. I still prefer the other one. This is just a preference thing. So we have seen that. I'm gonna show you DNS. I know we haven't done DNS yet, but when you create the domain DNS, you can see here that there is a new zone called lan12.net, or the domain you use, and it is already populated. There's some stuff there that for Active Directory that they're by default, and we don't recommend changing. So just in case you try it and you take a look at it and you're like, oh, what's this? It's supposed to be empty. No, it's supposed to be like that. Okay, so that's about it. I'm gonna show you just real quick how to join computers to a domain. So we're gonna go to S1, and you can go here, LAN to the server manager, and you can just click on workgroup, change, or you can go to right click the Windows system and change settings, and it's the same thing. So I'm gonna join it to domain lan12.net. For some reason it doesn't want to work. Change the settings, change 12.net, and now it's gonna ask me for the administrator. So you just have to put the administrator user that has all the user that has privilege to join computers to domain, and now it's just gonna be part of the domain. This requires a restart, so we're gonna restart, and now it's gonna. Okay, so we have restart now, and if we go to the main screen, to the login screen, now we can just log in with any users on the LAN 12 domain. In this case, I'm gonna use with the LAN 12 administrator. So you can see it's gonna create a profile there for me. I'm gonna apply the group policy settings and more, and yep, that's about it. So it's part of the domain. Now if you go here, you can see the domain is lan12.net. Okay, so that will be all for now. Hope you can enjoy it and have a good day.